From Philharmonic Hall in Lincoln Center, home of the world's greatest musical events, New York Philharmonic Young People's Concerts, under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein. And here is Mr. Bernstein.
Welcome back to Philharmonic Hall. You may think it strange that I have chosen to open this new season of Young People's Concerts with the subject of teachers. Because after all, aren't these programs always about music? And what have teachers got to do with music? Well, the answer is everything. We can all imagine a painter who's self-taught, or a writer, but it's almost impossible to imagine a professional musician who doesn't owe something to one teacher or another. The trouble is that we don't always realize how important teachers are in music or in anything else. Teaching is probably the noblest profession in the world, the most unselfish, difficult, and honorable profession. But it's also the most unappreciated, underrated, underpaid, and underpraised profession in the world. And so today we are going to praise teachers. And the best way I can think of for me to do this is by paying tribute to some of my own teachers who over the last 30 years or so have given me so much joy and inspiration. I want to begin with a teacher who is still one of the strongest influences in my life, even though he has already been dead for 12 years. I refer to Serge Koussevitzky. I'm not sure how many of you young people know that famous name, but you certainly ought to, because he was one of the greatest conductors of all time, and for 25 years led the magnificent Boston Symphony Orchestra to a position where it came to be known as the finest orchestra in the world. And on top of that, he created the famous summer school at Tanglewood, known as the Berkshire Music Center, and it was there in 1940, it's a long time ago, that I was lucky enough to become his pupil and eventually his close friend. I'd like to start our music today with a tribute to his memory. Koussevitzky was a Russian, and he dearly loved Russian music. So we're going to play a Russian piece that was a great favorite of his, the lovely, quiet prelude to Mussorgsky's opera Khovanshchina. Now that's a long name, but it's a very short piece which describes the sunrise on the Moscow River. Everything still and sleepy, interrupted only by the occasional crowing of roosters and the booming of bells from the Moscow steeples. When Koussevitzky played this music, he somehow managed to produce an almost magic spell, which we, his students, still carry around with us in our ears. And his performance remains a model that we can strive all our lives to equal. Now here's the prelude to Mussorgsky's opera Khovanshchina. I wish, I, I wish you could all have heard that beautiful little piece played by Kusevitsky. It was magical. And the same magic he brought to it, he brought to everything he did, especially to his teaching. You see, he taught his pupils by simply inspiring them. He taught everything through feeling, through instinct and emotion. Even the purely mechanical matter of beating time, of conducting 4 beats in a bar, became an emotional experience instead of a mathematical one. I can still hear his voice now telling me how he wanted me to beat a slow tempo of 4 beats smoothly, or as musicians say, legato. He would say, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and it must be warm, warm like the sun. You see, he couldn't dream of conducting 4 dead beats just lying there. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was always a question of what happened between the beats, how the music moved from one beat to the next. 1 and 2 and 3 and suddenly the beats came to life. It became an exciting experience just to beat time. You see, teaching isn't just a dry business of scales and exercises and etudes. A great teacher is one who can light a spark in you, the spark that sets you on fire with enthusiasm for music or for whatever you happen to be studying. And that's where real knowledge comes from the desire to know, to learn. For instance, you can study the history of the Civil War till you're blue in the face, memorizing battles and generals and dates and places. But if you don't care about the Civil War, you'll wind up not knowing a thing about it. But if you're lucky enough to have a teacher who makes that war part of your life, part of your country and your past, then you can drink in gallons of dates and names and places, and you'll never forget them because you learned them out of excitement and enthusiasm. Kusevitsky was that kind of teacher. He lit those sparks. I wish he were here with us today, but we are privileged in having with us today his gracious wife, who is in her own way just as inspiring as he was. Madame Kusevitsky, do you remember the first piece I ever conducted under your husband's guidance? I know I'll never forget it because it was the first work I ever conducted in public at all. It was the Second Symphony by Randall Thompson, the distinguished American composer who, by a curious coincidence, was also one of my teachers. I'd been studying orchestration with him at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. And I shall always be thankful to him for the insights he gave me into orchestration, into how instruments work, blend, and combine together into an orchestra. And so now I want to pay a musical tribute to Randall Thompson by playing the 3rd movement from that same symphony, number 2, that I conducted way back then in 1940. This movement is a wonderful sort of jazzy scherzo, and I'll never forget what a challenge it was to conduct it at the age of 21 and at my first public concert, because the rhythms in it are so tricky. But any of you who ever listened to Dave Brubeck or Stan Kenton will feel right at home in this piece. It's tricky, but it's great fun and strictly American. Now, here is the scherzo from Randall Thompson's Second Symphony. Out of all the teachers I've had in my life, and I'd guess roughly there have been 60 or 70, there are at least 24 I'd want to thank for the excitement and inspiration they've brought me. Of course, I can't do that today, there isn't time, but I would like to mention a few of the most important ones so that I can share with you my deep gratitude to them. For instance, there was the great Professor David Prohl at Harvard, who taught me philosophy and aesthetics like a blazing illumination. There was Edward Burlingame Hill at Harvard, that fine American composer who first opened my eyes to orchestration. Heinrich Gebhardt, the great piano teacher of Boston, who made every lesson a ride on a magic carpet. There was Isabella Vengerova. Oh, how I miss that great lady, that adorable tyrant who forced me to listen to myself when I played the piano. And so many others. Richard Steur, Susan Williams. I won't go on with this list of names, but I am happy to say that some of them have been kind enough to come here today and be with us, and for that I feel proud and honored. We have here in the hall, for example, Philip Marson, who long years ago at Boston Latin School drew back the curtain for me on the wonders of the English language, of poetry and rhythm, and through his love of words made me fall in love with them too. And here is Helen Coates, who 30 years ago gave me my first really important piano lessons, and who for almost 20 years now has been my devoted and overworked secretary. And René Longy, who taught me the art of reading orchestra scores at the Curtis Institute, and who shared with me so many exciting discoveries in the realm of modern music. And Tilman Merritt, whose brilliant and original way of teaching counterpoint and harmony I have never found equaled. He was also my tutor at Harvard, and I owe him a particular debt of gratitude. But I want to make now a very special tribute to one of the foremost composers of our country, Walter Piston, because this season he's celebrating his 70th birthday. Anyone who has ever had the good fortune to study with Piston at Harvard College can never forget the deep understanding of music he was able to communicate, or for that matter, the deep belly laughter that went with all our classes. He's certainly one of the wittiest minds I have ever known. And in honor of his 70th birthday, we are going to play his most popular piece, the suite from his ballet, The Incredible Flutist. Now, I'm not going to bother you with the story, except to say that it's about a circus that arrives in a sleepy Spanish town, and that one of the circus acts is a flute player who wakes the town up. But never mind about that. Everybody dances tangos and fandangos and minuets and Spanish waltzes and polkas, and it doesn't really matter why. The music is what's important, and it's a delight to hear this music. Now, here's Walter Piston's ballet suite, The Incredible Flutist, which we are playing as a birthday tribute to a marvelous composer, a lovable man, and an inspired teacher. really is an incredible flute player, isn't it? I have saved for last my greatest living teacher, and also probably the greatest living conductor in the world today, Fritz Reiner, who gave me my first baby lessons in conducting. Now, Reiner didn't use that inspirational method of Kusevitsky particularly. There were no poetic speeches about the warm sun and things like that. There was only hard work and impossibly high standards of knowledge and the all-important law of economy. Every gesture must be concentrated on getting the orchestra to produce the sound you think the composer wanted. And so I want to pay my musical tribute to Dr. Reiner by playing for him and for you the Academic Festival Overture by Brahms. And I have two reasons for choosing this piece. One, because it was with this overture that I first auditioned for Reiner when I was trying to get accepted into his conducting class at the Curtis Institute. So I always think of the Academic Festival Overture whenever I think of Reiner. But the second reason is more important. You see, Brahms wrote this overture in honor of a school, the University of Breslau in Germany, and he even put into it 4 famous university songs, student songs, all old favorites of university students, and I'm sure they'll all sound familiar to you too. So the Academic Festival Overture is really a tribute to learning, to students and teachers and schools everywhere. And it's in that spirit that we play it now to honor not only Fritz Reiner, but all the great teachers on earth who work so hard to give young people a world that is a better, richer, and more civilized place.
Mr. Bernstein has asked us to tell you that in the short time since the taping of this program, Fritz Reiner died after a short illness. He would have been 75 years old next month. From Philharmonic Hall in Lincoln Center, another New York Philharmonic Young People's Concert under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein. This first program of the season was a tribute to teachers and featured works by Mussorgsky, Randall Thompson, Walter Piston, and Brahms. The next program in the Young People series will take place in 4 weeks on Monday, December 23rd, at which time Mr. Bernstein will present Young Performers. This program was recorded in Philharmonic Hall and was produced and directed by Roger Englander.